So to make it interesting, I created a bunch of the interactive survey. Please, this is a good time to bring up your mobile, turn the camera on, and please get this QR code scanned in. So, or you can just type in slido.com in your mobile, and we start with a few surveys first. So I'll dial it in here as well. I'll start the first one. It's a dummy question to combine the bunch of people in the fancy building in Adelaide. Also, I see over 90 people in the participants. Please answer this question. That'll be great. I see a bunch of people coming through. So what is your profession here? So I'll give you the last 20 seconds to answer. So this is all about getting everyone together in this platform, and check the numbers for the following questions. Thank you. Yeah, I see most of people, they're styling in. Yeah, apologies, I didn't really detail that for the other professions. So which becomes nearly 20% of this audience. Okay, I'll lock it here and move on to the presentation. Yeah, so I want to ask the opinion from here as well when you cover the accreditation of the Centers for Comparative Planning. Also, to get to our conclusion, we really need to note down different components, clinical expertise and physical fundamentals and practicality in our planning, as Jonathan mentioned. So I'll give some examples of what Jonathan mentioned, which really demonstrate the thought flow to get to the end for our proposals and recommendations. Okay. So the first question is, what is accreditation here? I'll ask first, how and what and whom, right? So accreditation is an evaluation quality assurance process. That's the how, I'll say. It requires X here will be each of our department to confirm that meet the specific set of standards. That's the what we need to check, set forth by an external body. Therefore, that actually inevitably involves assessment by the qualified peer reviewers, that's the whom. So to ensure the safety and the quality standards here. So that's the accreditation we are to be on the same page we're talking about. So what's the context? As Jonathan mentioned, to be more cohesive. So the guidelines developed, the my part of this talk is really small subsection and focusing on the accreditation part. So we got the 3 dot points from the guideline to envisage that comparative planning may be carried out by a network of the centers, not just the clinical proton centers forthcoming in Adelaide there, as the forced engagement in proton therapy services in the network-wise, and to assist ensuring the workload of the dual planning. So, as Jonathan mentioned, ACDS and TRO is involved in harmonization group. There's a bunch of issues. I'll just show some examples for robust evaluation, robust reporting. It's really important for accreditation as well. This really highlights, the accreditation and training is quite essential, especially if it's quite a norm for implementing the new techniques and technologies as part of standard clinical practice. So I'll get back to Paul here again. So the second question, would you like to be accredited? Okay, thanks everyone. No one selected number 3. So about the 80% of the people selected yes, I wish to be accredited. So I'm glad this talk can be quite relevant. So I'll move on to the next one. So please choose top 5 cancers you'd like to prioritize if you have your proton centers there, or if you have you're accredited for comparative planning, which one you'd like to treat first. So you choose the first one will be the top. So please choose the 5 tumor types to get the opinion from the audience. Also, if you'd like to treat more others, there is the QA tab. Thanks for one to type it in. In the application, there's the QA tab there. Please type in any other tumor types. It's not listed here. Okay, so most of the audience have a pretty similar opinion. The ocular melanoma will be really useful for your fixed gantry. It will come on live first. Yes, the pediatric, of course, no doubt there, if you're on the same page. Okay, I'll move on to the next one. So imagine you plan to form proton working group at your local site after this symposium to be able to perform the comparative planning for photon and proton. So what are the main hurdles you are facing today after the symposium? So those are the bunch of questions, the options. It's a multi-choice. You can choose multiple, as many as you want. The lack of time to perform dual planning, lack of knowledge, lack of staff and resources, lack of the tools to do so, or any other reasons. Yeah, thanks for participating. I see a lot of numbers coming through. I'll leave here another 20 seconds for more people to dial in. Yeah, if there are any other reasons, please comment on the QA tab. It will be really valuable to consider in future. So I'll leave another 10 seconds here. Yeah, good to see, yeah, no one has enough time to do the draw planning, which is understandable. Therefore, mindful of time, I'll move on to next. Okay, what should be the minimum requirement? That will be one of the our proposal and recommendation at the end. I'd like to get an opinion from the audience. Please respond. It's a multi-choice questions. So what should be the minimum requirements as you think as of today? So I've noted down over the site visit to experience site that really hosts training and any certification from the workshops and their own training programs, etc. And the in-house training local site, I think should be the minimum requirements. We should have our MDT group and should have a proper training documentation in each site. And also plan review by the experienced site, overseas or domestic, doesn't matter. As long as they are experienced, and then get us some full support letter from them. So there's a written evidence supported by the experienced sites, or then continuous professional development activities. There are a bunch of different options, training course and workshop offered from different external bodies, and any others. Okay, give another 10 seconds to get more opinions. Okay, I got one last question at the end. I'm glad to see most of people selected similar range of options. Okay, I'll move on to the last question of the survey. Who should govern the accreditation process, you think? Again, it's a multi-choice question. It can be more than one. Or if you think any others, please comment on the Q&A tab, please. Yeah, I see that vast majority saying the National Particle Therapy Network in Australia and New Zealand setting. Yeah, thanks for participating in the interactive survey here. I'll move on to the next. I'll leave it on live for anyone want to continue on. So I want to jot down each components, what to be considered, what to be checked, and the clinical expertise here. I just quote this. I think it's from the Queensland, 2017. So those from the ocular melanoma are quite superior, the benefit there, and also the brain and CNS case and pediatric. So I'll see the pediatric CNS, the brain, that can be good commonality there, and also ocular melanoma. So it really requires very specialties in both photon and proton planning. That would be the absolute minimum requirement for each center to perform comparative planning. So the bottom line is, multidisciplinary team approach with quality of care. We really need a good team to perform such tasks. And also, as Jonathan mentioned, the consistent volume will be the bottom line of it. It's upstream issue when you try to compare the two from different centers, from different regions. That's a really highlights one good example, how large extent of variation in this particular neuro example here. Also, between the two types of planning, the things shouldn't be changed. The consistent prescription of fractionation also standardized planning objectives, etc. So those are the minimum checkpoints. And also in the physical aspects, try to not jot down what is the challenge here. In the proton, we got different extra dimension of the distribution for the fall-off. So this very simple equation, thankfully it's been exactly solved. Everyone knows now this peak here, but now this is rapid fall-off in the beam direction, as well as the orthogonal plane from the beam direction, such as we're familiar with the lateral distribution, the penumbra. But actually, when you look at the proton here, it's really rapidly changing in terms of penumbra for this 200 mega electron volt. So I'll give a quick example here. What's the difference of the proton compared to photon? What's the similarity? So in the different depths, you see how much the blurring will happen in lateral penumbra. Also, when you look at beam direction, but spread out break peak, it will really change as the depth's going down there. And this is flatness, it doesn't really get maintained in deeper level. So that's the challenge in the reality. And then when you try to compare the predicted and the measured, and now you have a good idea how much discrepancies in between predicted and measurements. So you got distal end here, different shifts, the range uncertainty also not only there, and the proximal end, and then the entrance, there are a bit of discrepancy. Also, we assume that will be the flat, but in reality, it's not really flat, those range here. And then when you look at line profile, it will be same out of field, and then also asymmetry there, and also the non-flatness inside the region. But it gets really worse because no one is now doing the positive scattering mode. It is now that pencil beam scanning, right? We're using pencil beam, and that the penumbra, the wide range of penumbra changes depending on size and depth. And those are we did linear summation to achieve what we want here. And they're just being scanned. So as Jonathan mentioned, the different layer spacing will be very important, also accurate spacing for each spot in each plane. So it gets worse when you try to, it sounds PBS is a fancy term, so we need to really take it into account. So everyone now know the relative biological effectiveness. In reality, as far as I know, there's only 1 point, 1.1. The single number is applied in our commercial treatment planning system, even though the break peak, the RBE is not constant number along the depth dose profile. That's another things to consider, how it's built in your treatment planning system to perform our comparative planning. So as Joseph mentioned, just a quick idea how much variation there in terms of CT, Hounsfield unit to convert to relative stopping power ratio. There's a Pitcore consensus. When you use this average line for all different types of tissue, it's about 1.5%. So when you really implement in the clinical scenario, the bone is about 2%, it's a couple of percent, 1% for soft tissue. That's actually the per unit length. What that means, larger lengths, distal end, we will have a larger error. So I'll bring down with a quick table, the brain, the short range and large range for prostate. It ended up being in calculating the water equivalent range. So the range effect can be typically 1.5 millimeter or 2 to 3 millimeter. So the checkpoint here, in the end, and the physical aspects, we really need to have a correct understanding of physical fundamentals for protons in relation to photons. The accurate beam model is an absolute minimum, as long as the CT curve how it's dealt with to convert the starting power ratio. And then, so your beam model should be accurate. You should have a very high resolution, good enough resolution for different depths for the break peaks. So there's conjunction linear combination of those will give us accurate dose distribution when pencil beam scanning is used. Also, we have to check that the 1.1 constant number of the RB, how it's applied to for the final dose calculation. Another complex, now there's contentious topic about the dose to water and dose to medium, depending on which algorithm you're using. So that needs to be really checked and correctly documented. So I'd like to now move on to practicality in RT planning for both photon and proton. So imagine we have this tumor here. If we put the single beam of the proton, that's a reality, right? So based on what of all the aforementioned components to the range uncertainty, I note down, I've got the proximal end, distal end, and the penumbra also inside of the dose. So the four components. Now, each component contribution from the planning side and delivery of the inner homogeneity as an extra factor, right? So I'll just note down all those numbers as an example, two extreme case in brain and prostate. I'll just dump that into those single beam, very simple scenario to give you the audience rough idea how much dose uncertainty is there at maximum. So that's the reason we really need that those uncertainties is field specific. And even with a single beam direction, depending on which spot it's going, it has a different range uncertainty here. Therefore, it really needs a field specific margin. So that's a quick example. As Jonathan mentioned, everyone is so familiar with the isotropic, but we are sometimes use a non-isotropic margin, but more or less it's now and then nice and round around the CTV to create PTV as a final volume to prescribe to deliver the dose on. And whereas now have each specific, depending on the target shape, also where the beam's coming from, the robust target volume will be different in proton scenario. So when I educate in our local center, I call it the triple shakes as a simplistic mindset. So the first one, we need to shake this where we can create the spot where the spot spacing can happen. It depends on the target shape also where beam's coming from. So the CTV needs to be shaken in order to create RTV. So that's where the beam spots can be spaced or during the optimization.
2 minutes, please, 2 minutes.
Yeah. So at the end, the outcome is the reported out dose distribution. So during the optimization, our final aim is we really want to narrow down this the DVH bands. So similar way in the final evaluation, this hot topic, as Jonathan mentioned, we will need to evaluate accordingly to account for this robust optimization. So the checkpoint here, we really need some understanding of this planning strategies in both photon and protons. Appropriate uncertain protocols need to be built in. It will be really depends on different tumor sites. Sufficient planning experience is absolute minimum, and consistent, the correct evaluation needs to be performed in between the two cases. So the proposal here, as we did a survey for the accreditation of the non-proton therapy centers to perform comparative planning for patient eligibility assessment. What we propose here as a minimum, the bar. So the staff group, I think we really need the on-site training and experienced sites that really offers and hosts in a regular way the training and the certification programs. So the in-house training also necessary within our local site for the MDT, not only in particular groups only. There's such a documentation of evidences will be required, and then plan review of different tumor sites needs to be done by experienced proton centers, either local or overseas. And then we really need that the written form of the supporting letters. Okay, this site can really produce the equivalent plans as it's done in the treating centers. And then it is a vast, rapidly changing field. The rapid CPD will be necessary to regularly get engaged in this society. So who to govern? These are my last slides. To be overseen and endorsed by each professional bodies. As Valerie and all these mentioned, Each professional body has now proton working group established. And so there is Australian proton network. Actually, it's a combination of each particle working group. So we propose the core subcommittee can really look at this accreditation. So I deliberately made this as a inverse primary check. We actually serving to get endorsed by each professional bodies here. So that's the proposal to be shared with the group. And that's at the end of my talk.
Thanks, Adam. There's a lot to consider there. And I'm really glad to say that here in Adelaide, we've probably satisfied all four criteria that you proposed there on your second to last slide. I love an interactive presentation. Love a good Slido. Just out of curiosity, how many respondents did you have to that?
Each of the survey, I've got the 50.
50. Okay, so 50 answers from. Oh, I think that's going to be really quite useful information moving forward. Okay, any questions from the rest of the audience?
Hi, Adam. My name is Macy. I'm the PM for the ABC facility from the South Australian Environment Protection Authority. I just wanted to make everyone aware that the process for accreditation, which is really amazing, I think what's been talked about in this session is really great. However, we would like to, I guess, advise that any training or certification that is finalised with the respective roles for people involved in the proton therapy facility will require licensing by us. So Scott is already aware of this and likely going to coordinate that for the ABC. So just be mindful that whatever you guys do propose, that would need to then be ratified by the EPA.
Cool. So can I just clarify, is that jurisdictional or is it national?
Yeah, it's jurisdictional. So the ABC is regulated by the South Australian Environment Protection Authority. So there was mention of our PANZA up there, but they would likely play a part, but it's not wouldn't be their role to regulate the facility.
Fantastic. Okay.
Definitely important comments.